Tennis star Novak Djokovic is not anti-vaccine. He shared in new public statements. He's pro-freedom of choice. The athlete is speaking out after he was deported from Australia last year over his refusal to take the COVID-19 vaccine. Here he is on CBS's 60 Minutes over the weekend.
Djokovic found controversy of a larger scale in early 2022. Unvaccinated, he got an exemption to play the Australian Open at a time when the country was coming out of a long COVID lockdown. But after public outcry, Djokovic was deported, making for a global news event.
How much of a toll did that whole controversy take on you?
It did. I was basically declared as a villain of the world, and...
You sense that?
Of course, and I had basically, most of the world against me. I had that kind of experience on the tennis court with crowds that were not maybe cheering me on, but I never had this particular experience before in my life.
Did you misread the Australian public and what the reaction would be?
I mean, which way did I misread?
They don't like exceptionalism. This was a culture that felt very strongly about vaccinations.
But the point is that it was not up to me to read anybody. I got the exemption, I got the permission to come into the country. And so, of course, it escalated to the highest of the highest levels globally.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You were not against vaccination. You just did not want it for yourself.
Exactly. People tried to, declare me as an anti-vax. I'm not anti-vax. No, I'm pro-vax. I'm pro-freedom to choose.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I mean, whatever you think about people's individual decision-making, the point at which it became clear that there were not as many gains to be had from in terms of transmitting COVID by personally vaccinating, the kind of community benefit argument took a bit of a dive, and the public perception of that and backing off of that argument didn't follow what science was indicating, so that people who were making personal decisions at the same time that they weren't actually bullying or threatening or trying to coerce anybody else to do anything different were being framed like they broadly had an antipathy to vaccines. And you see this a little bit with RFK Jr. as well. When I started to try to dig into the accusations that he is anti-vax, as someone who, frankly, was not politically especially sympathetic to him, I found it to be difficult to pin people down. I had various experts on my show try to pin down what they actually disagreed with him with from a scientific perspective. Was he substantively wrong about his readings of various studies, X, Y, and Z? Because he also maintains that he is not anti-vax, that his children have all been vaccinated with the normal childhood vaccines, that he has some critiques of who should be taking what in different circumstances, but the holistic label anti-vax doesn't apply. It is interesting seeing now, all these years later, some nuance being brought to this conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, it boggles my mind that as recently as last summer, he could not travel to the U.S. as an unvaccinated non-citizen, that we weren't letting people come to the country unless they were U.S. citizens if they weren't vaccinated. And for what? Like to prevent COVID from entering the country? I mean, it's just laughable. The disease is here, and by then, we knew that if there is a benefit of the vaccine, it's predominantly for the person who takes it in terms of some evidence of symptom mitigation particularly for very at-risk people. Not that that it's protective of others to a substantial degree, stopping the transmission. The idea that we would still maintain this a policy that our peer countries didn't have. I mean, the U.S. was stricter on COVID than a lot of our European countries in terms of required vaccination, required masking, required things being shut down. Now, people still wore masks and people still got vaccinated and people still avoided crowds and did a lot of those things in European countries. It wasn't required of them, and we required it. And for what? Not for substantial differences in outcomes compared to a lot of these places. Some areas of America had worse outcomes just by the same levels of militants. I think that reflects some underlying issues in the health system and the healthiness of our population, rather than we just didn't shut down hard enough. That's laughable at a certain point. So I was looking to see, where we're at. There aren't a lot of vaccine requirements left just generally in America, but there are some. I was checking, and we can put this tweet up on screen. This is from a group that opposes mandates for colleges. So they track how many are still left. There's still 71 colleges in America that require you to get vaccinated, boosted, bivalent stuff to attend the institution. There's fewer every week. Colleges are dropping out of this regime. It remains darkly amusing to me. But what? You're smiling at me.
Nothing. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm happy that you still have 71 to be upset about. I don't know what you're going to do when there's not a single one left.
I mean, I'll be happy. I mean, it's not like I don't wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat and say, Montclair University, how could you? But it's just silly and unserious. And this is like the least. For college students, for I mean, this isn't a list of nursing homes or something. This is a population that for whom vaccination might be the right idea, might be the right policy for some of these people. Again, I'm like what Novak Djokovic said. I'm exactly the same kind of philosophy. I did get vaccinated. If I decide to get boosted again, that will be my choice. But to take this choice away from the students at these a dwindling number of colleges still just makes utterly no sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of stores, you see that they're signage around D.C. that are banning wearing masks inside because of their fear of theft. In Atlanta, there's this proposed ski mask ban that's been hotly debated. And it is interesting to see a little bit of asymmetry there. We were told over and over again, no, people can make choices. We're not going to stigmatize you having a mask, but we've seen all these fights break out on planes where people seem to be triggered by other folks' mask wearing. And now we're seeing an attempt for a municipality to literally ban wearing face coverings, which doesn't feel very freedom of choicey to me. So we'll see where this goes. I'm not going to blow a gasket prematurely over what's going on in Atlanta and claim authoritarianism, at least not in that regard. I do think there's an authoritarian speech program that's going on that's intended to shut down conversation about the ongoing genocide in which 18,000 people have been killed in Gaza. But that's where my focus is, less so on these things. But it is interesting to see on 60 Minutes, of all places, a substantial tone shift, it seems, about how COVID-era policies manifested.
I think it's not. I think the vaccine mandates in particular, the extent to which we went down that rabbit hole is not going to be remembered as U.S. policymakers' finest moment. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think the worst parts were people whose financial livelihood were implicated by it, people who were fired over it and things like that.
For sure, which happened to a lot of people. Happened to tons of employees, government employees too. People in the military, obviously. Now they're being invited back. We talked about that. You might have been out the day we talked about that. The military is trying to, because their recruitment numbers are bad. They're trying to say, hey, sorry, we fired you for not getting vaccinated. It's fine, come back.
Yeah, the other thing they have to do to get recruitment numbers up, of course, is just to not have any kind of health care or free education options for people in the United States of America. They've admitted to that.
Well, that does it for us for today. Tomorrow on Rising, we will actually have Marianne Williamson joining us to talk about her 2024 campaign. You won't want to miss that.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. For those of you who prefer to listen while you're on the move, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.